I don't think that becoming obese is a choice, but I do feel that remaining obese, once you know what you can do, once you understand calories in, calories out, and that you can lose weight through diet and cardio, of which we've talked about today, I think that obesity is a choice at that point. And what is your feelings on that statement? And speaking of DEXA scan, I'm a proponent of how it's not very accurate. What do you think, in your own experience, how accurate do you think it is? For example, if I go in and I'm 195 pounds today, and in 2 weeks I diet and I show up and I'm 185, how accurate do you think it's going to be to say this is how much fat you lost, this is how much muscle you lost, water, and so on? Like, do you trust it? I personally do not trust it at all.
I would trust it over long periods of time. I wouldn't get it in such short intervals. You got to be careful about glycogen storage and all this type of thing. They're trying to figure out how to measure that and address that and adjust for that though. I wouldn't just I would get it over long periods of time intervals, and then I would also use other sources of measurement too. Look at the mirror. How do you look? It's a little bit more practical to get a DEXA scan to measure like your visceral fat and things like that. But do waist circumference, do different circumferences, look at the mirror, check your strength, cardiorespiratory fitness, how well you're recovering, your heart rate and that type of thing. So I wouldn't say it's the end all be all, but I think it's an okay measure for monitoring. It's certainly better than the bioimpedances and things like that out there, but I wouldn't just live and die by the DEXA, as you said.
Absolutely. Speaking of body fat percentage, what do you think is like, I'll call it an ideal healthy body fat for males versus females? Because I watched this video, the guy had lost to 50 pounds. He got to 175 pounds, DEXA scan 15.2%. He's like, I'm not happy. I want to lose the 50 pounds in the 6 months is my goal. And so he continued to diet. And I was like, that guy looks great. I could see the abs. I was like, he's 15%. I was like, machine seemed pretty good, the DEXA. He dieted for an additional 4 to 6 weeks. He got down the 10 pounds he wanted. He did the DEXA scan, and he was 15.5%. His body fat percent went up on the DEXA, and he had lost 10 pounds. And I'm like, there you have it. He lost all that weight for nothing. He's trying to go from 15%, it's trying to get down single-digit body fat, trying to look like a Gymshark model, I'm sure. But to me, it was a waste. 15% for men, to me, that is like an ideal health fitness zone. What do you preach with your patients? Like, what would be the ideal? Somebody gets down to 15%. Are you going to encourage them, just keep going for it? Or where is the mark for you?
Yeah. So with obesity stuff, we actually use more of like a clinical diagnosis. So for example, there's just a study.
BMI or
Well, so you can start as a BMI, but again, there's a lot of issues with that. So for example, I don't know what your BMI is, but my BMI is like 28 or
31-ish, 30,
yeah.
in the low 30s.
Your doctor would put on obesity if they didn't actually look at you. So obviously it's a decent screening thing, but then you go into waist circumference and then DEXA scan, sure, fine. We have a body fat percentage, but the ideal situation is for example, there was a study that just came out that showed that people with like a normal BMI that was like under 25, they had type 2 diabetes. And it's like, well, how is that possible? Their BMI is normal. Well, they still had too much fat on their body. They lost however much weight, and then they reversed their type 2 diabetes. And so you'd want to take a clinical look at this person. So your person with 15% body fat, who cares about the number, right? You said they had abs, probably clinically their blood pressures, blood sugars, and everything are great. I wouldn't have told that person to continue to lose weight, especially if it made them miserable. So I have these, the same things with my patients, like, morbid, whatever you say, class 3 obesity, a lot of weight, and they lose like 100 pounds and they're still, according to the BMI, they'd still have obesity, or even body fat percentage. They still might have a 25 or 30% body fat percentage, but they feel so much better. They might not be happy with that number, but all of their health issues have resolved. So I don't like to say ideal, but if you're looking at future risk, a 15% is fine. 10 to 15%, probably okay. Women, you have to adjust that up, somewhere around the 18 to 25%. You start getting a little bit lower there, they're at risk of losing their periods, but 20 or so percent body fat percentages, I wouldn't say ideal, but then we can look at the risk of future metabolic health issues. But I tell my patients, don't focus on the number. I have patients that just go, I need to get to 120 pounds. And I'm like, why? What is the purpose of that number? And they say, well, I don't know. That's where I was in high school or whatever. So forget the idea that there's an ideal weight or body fat percentage. Where do you feel the best? Where do you look the best, feel the best, and aren't miserable trying to stay there? That's what I would say.
I think that's a wonderful answer. I love that answer. Rather than focusing on that set number, 15, 25, and so on, focus on how you feel. As we said, focus on how you feel, because we're not all born to be 15% or 25% for women. Like, although I feel that's the healthy number, some of us are born, and I'm sure you know this, born with more fat cells and more hunger hormones, and they suffer more. Not every man can diet to 15% and feel good at 15. So if you're at 50% body fat, morbidly obese, and you diet down to 30, and if you try to keep going down and you're starving all the time, have no energy, not sleeping properly, is suffering, starving, like, what is the point? Because being healthy is more than just, am I physically at my peak at 15%? There's the mental, emotional, spiritual, all that comes in together. And so I really think it's great that you answered by saying where you feel the best, not just that number, because almost everyone I coach wants to be single digit body fat. I'm like, that's not where you should be. Where do you feel healthy? And they keep dieting. Eventually they feel like shit. And then they say, oh, your diet doesn't work. And I'm like, your body wasn't made to have 9% body fat. Even though you have my cookbook and it's got the low calorie recipes and so on, doesn't mean you need to get to single digit body fat. If you try and you fight your genetics that much, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's switch. I want to switch to this topic about obesity. And I think I had originally made a post and it said, obesity is a choice. And a lot of people, it was very controversial. A lot of people were saying, I agree with you. A lot of said you disagreed. And after reading all the comments, and I think you wrote a comment on that, I had to change my mind because I could see at birth, you're perhaps not born obese and then you become obese, but you're a baby, you're a child, your parents are feeding you, you don't know what you're doing. And so it's not fair to say that somebody who's a kid growing up is obese and blaming them. So I don't think that becoming obese is a choice, but I do feel that remaining obese, once you know what you can do, once you understand calories in, calories out, and that you can lose weight through diet and cardio, of which we've talked about today, I think that obesity is a choice at that point. And what is your feelings on that statement?
Yeah. So to go back to kind of like as you're a kid. So yeah. So through life, the way that I describe it is that we kind of go through it passively. You're a kid, you're just getting fed whatever's in front of you. Right. And some of my patients describe themselves as, I was always a little bit heavier as a kid, and that kind of predisposed them to this life. And then they come to me and go, I want to do something about it. Most people go through life passively, subconsciously. The choice isn't like, do I want to have obesity or not? It's more like, I just want to not be hungry. I just want to have some pleasure here. I want to be out of pain, whatever. That's the immediate choice. And in fact, it's funny on those posts, there are people coming on like, well, I believe it's a choice. I lost 100 pounds or whatever, and that's because I chose to do so. And I'm like, yeah, but did you choose to be that way in the first place? And they go, it's a good point. So then whether it's a choice to remain that way, I think we kind of get into what we talked about before. You have to make the choice to attempt it. Nobody can do it for you, right? It's you got there passively, as I mentioned before, whether it's subconsciously or just not a priority, whatever. You have to make the choice to do something about it. Now, whether you're going to be successful or not, I can't say, because as you mentioned before, some people just feel miserable when they're trying to resolve their obesity. So let's take an extreme example. Someone who's 400 pounds, they lose 150 pounds, which is amazing. They get down to 250 pounds and they still technically have obesity. Are they choosing to still have that? And they're working tooth and nail to stay there. The analogy would be like, I wrote this down before we got in our talk here, but if you're going from New York City to LA, let's say, some people can fly there on a plane, some people can drive, some people can bike, and other people have to walk. Technically, to get there, it's a choice, right? Like the person can walk there. It's a choice, but practically for many people, it's maybe not a choice. I don't know how else to describe it than that. Like I think we have a lot of control over our behaviors, but like say when you get really hungry and tired and you get home from work and you're trying your best. Your life is hard. Your hormones, like when you're trying to diet down, you're super hungry and craving food. You technically have the free will to eat whatever's in your cookbook, Coach Greg. What's in your cookbook? You got some chicken, broccoli, some better
protein ice cream.
Protein
and I know
ice
you're
cream.
against ice cream.
No,
I've seen some of your memes on the low fat ice cream. Like, he hasn't tried my ice cream. That's
I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it.
You have to.
But like, yeah. So you technically have free wills, but some people will argue that because of the way our body's getting nudged, you're getting just kind of shoved in one direction. You technically have the ability to eat whatever you want, right? But it's our body's just kind of pushing us towards a different way. So like, it's a behavior. It doesn't directly control the scale. It just has an indirect effect on the scale. So I would argue it's not a choice, but the attempt to lose weight and resolve your obesity is a choice. It sounds like semantics, but I think it's an important distinction, because I just think for some people, it's not really a choice. I think some people that were chiming in like, screw you, where'd you get your medical degree? A Cracker Jack box? And I lost 200 pounds and I did it fine. I'm like, yeah, no, that's great. I have patients that have done that, and it's wonderful. I have other patients that I have to put them on medicines and they had surgery. And even some of those patients, they don't do well. And it's like, are they choosing? I don't know. I don't know how else to answer it, because I don't think they tell me they don't want obesity anymore. And it's like, well, I don't think they're choosing obesity. I think they're kind of nudged in a different direction. I don't know how else to describe it.
Well, I think that I would respond by saying, for example, if I want to have more muscle, if you're just a normal person, you don't train. If I want to have more muscle, I could say having more muscle is a choice. And they say, well, I don't have really great genetics. I'm skinny, fat. I don't have a lot of muscle. But I'll be like, but if you join the gym and train, say 3-4 days a week, you're probably going to put on a couple pounds of muscle. You might not put on 50 pounds and look like a bodybuilder, but you can certainly choose to build more muscle. And so is obesity a choice? Well, if you're overweight, you can certainly put the fork down, eat less, and exercise, and you will absolutely lose weight to the point of you will die of starvation, of anorexia, if you don't eat anything. And if you exercise 10 hours a day, you will lose that weight. So you will, I think, no matter what, it is a choice. But to not hurt anyone's feelings, you have to say that choice for some people is such a difficult choice to try to make, because it's such an impossible uphill battle of suffering and feeling like crap, that it's not fair to just say, hey, it's your choice, you chose that. Because the suffering involved, because if I could get to 5% body fat and stay there year round, but there is no way I'd live my life like that. I'd probably kill myself. Like, it would just be that much of a nightmare. I would lay in bed all day and suffer and never eat, and just my life would be a miserable nightmare. And so some people there, the 400-pound person, they might get to 250 and they're good. They did pretty good. They get to 220 and it's like, oh my God, they're hungry. They keep pushing and they get to 200, but their ideal weight is 150 and they're like, it's not worth it. And so I understand that because of the genetics and the food choices, and perhaps they don't have the education on what to eat, all these things, the underactive thyroid, all that, it's going to make it so hard to lose that weight that it's better for them to not keep losing weight. But if you're just basing it on semantics of the argument, because you can lose the weight if you're forced to with handcuffs and you can't eat, that it is a choice. It's just such an extremely difficult choice to make that it's not worth making that choice.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. So like that, yeah, it kind of goes back to the analogy. Like, you can go from New York City to LA, but you have to walk. So that's your choice. So like, I think if we agree that that's the same like kind of choice, then I think we're probably on the same page there. Because like, yeah, so okay, so going back to your bodybuilding example. So if somebody wants, can somebody just be you if they choose to? I would say no. They can gain muscle though, right? They can gain muscle. That's their choice. The attempt to be like you is absolutely their choice. Can they be you? Probably not. You know, practically. I mean, I suppose they could choose and maybe, you know, use all sorts of, who knows what's out there right now.
They could use every drug in the world, go on all the bodybuilding programs, have the best coach in the world, the best diet, and 99% of people would never have the muscle mass that I have right now. It's just unfortunate. It's just genetics. Yeah. But doesn't mean you can't improve yourself. That's all.
So I think if we're kind of in agreement there, then that's hey, I think that's about right then. I think if people understand that concept, that how it becomes so difficult, it becomes practically not a choice, but like you still technically can. So here's an example. I had a patient that They had a gastric bypass. I put them on all the drugs in the world that are approved for weight loss, and just I hit their brain on different receptors with like, no, there's no way they have an appetite, and they don't. They told me that like I don't know. I got to stop. I can't stop buying candy bars at the pharmacy. And I was like, I don't know. And they've had psychologists and whatever. I don't know. I'm not sure how to. They have choice, but like for some reason they're driven to do that. And I don't know how to address that.
Well, I think it's no different than if you're an alcoholic, you have a choice to not be an alcoholic. You can literally stop drinking alcohol. And so we see sometimes people encouraging people to lose weight. And it was this story I watched the other day. And after the guy hit the plateau of 200 pounds, he bought him a huge cake, probably 2,000 calories, and like, let's celebrate. I'm like, that's like saying to somebody, let's take you off of alcohol and you're 30 days sober and let's celebrate with a beer. I'm like, why would you reintroduce that same thing and use the reward, use junk food, high calorie dense food as a reward for good behavior? I was just like, you're setting it up for disaster.
Yeah. So there are things in our brain that push us and drive us in a way. It's hard. I mean, I'm not a big time philosophy guy. It's just, I understand that this is a philosophical type of question. It'd be really interesting to have a discussion with a philosopher about that, about free will, about choice, and if our brains are wired. Here's another example. Okay, we say obesity. Let's say I'm like, obesity is not a choice. But if we took someone with obesity, let's say one of my patients, and we put them on a stranded island. This sounds like extreme, but it's true because it shows how powerful our environment is. And you're like, goodbye, and they're like, I have to survive, and they're going around having to fish and like or hunt and gather berries and who knows, climb up in the trees and get freaking some sort of fruit and vegetables. They're going to lose weight. It's just going to happen. So like what I would say is that our environments kind of just drive us in a certain way, but like that's why it takes part of the choice out, but we still have free will. It's just really hard in our environment and with our biologies. That's kind of the gist.
Yeah, and so when I say obesity is a choice, I want to give power to the patient or the athlete, the person, because by saying, hey, it's genetics and it's your environment and all this, it kind of takes the power away from them, and they think, well, I have bad hormones, fat acceptance, just accept me for who I am, like it's not my fault. And I'm like thinking, but if I tell you that you can do something about it, which you can, it gives you the power. And the more they learn, for example, they could get some medications, so it certainly can help. If you have an underactive thyroid or something to decrease appetite, it's good, fat burners, all this stuff can help decrease appetite. It's going to help you. If you get like my cookbook and learn about low calorie foods, learn what has high calories, what has low, make the substitutions, that's going to help. If you learn what triggers you, like if I have ice cream in the house, cereal, I see it and I just want the whole thing. Like it's just a trigger for me. If you have triggers, get that food out of the house. Then people have chocolates and candies on their work desks. And I'm like, every day you're forcing yourself to use willpower to not eat that. It's another thing. And then you're going out with friends and stuff to bars, restaurants, and so on, and you're seeing what they do, and that encourages you to eat. That's another trigger. It's like you got to be careful. And the more you learn about what are your triggers, what are the environmental influences causing me to do that, what are the socioeconomic status of people like, I can't afford this, and then teaching them, well, actually, it's pretty cheap to buy a banana. You don't have to, like, when you learn all this stuff, you can absolutely make change. And the message I make, I don't know how many videos you've seen, but I keep preaching halfway there. It's not about being perfect. If you're let's say 400 pounds and your goal weight's 200, stop thinking 200, think 300. Because everybody can get halfway to that dream physique, that goal that people would say is ideal for healthy. Halfway there, that is going to make so much difference on your quality and quantity of life that why not go for it? Halfway there. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to get abs. Just try a little bit. Everyone can do that. And from there, once you're halfway there, it's going to take a lot more effort. That's when the hunger and the suffering and all that stuff really starts taking over. The closer you get to your ideal physique, the closer or the further you get from your genetic set point, that's when things, the hormones, the ghrelin, all these things start kicking in.
Yeah, I like how you're empowering. So that's the thing. So when I posted this, people are like, man, this is kind of depressing. I'm like, I don't like the post depressing stuff. They're like, I feel like, so I'm just kind of screwed. I'm like, no, I'm trying to normalize how people, like basically what you said, I have a lot of followers who have already gotten that halfway there. They're doing great. And it helped. I got an outpouring of messages from them, but then there were a lot of other people who were very angry and felt disempowered. But these other people that have been struggling, they felt heard, and it normalized how they've done so well already. They're not going to get to that ideal weight or whatever body composition, but in my eyes, they've succeeded. They've done amazing, and they're feeling great. So it's really hard. It's kind of a dichotomous, it's a really splitting topic, because like, I want those people to know that they're heard and they're validated. But I also want to empower the people that feel like they don't have any choice in the matter. And when you make one post like that, it splits. It makes those people I want to empower not necessarily feel good, but it helps the people that have already come so far feel good. So then I have to make another post and try to explain it more. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I like what you discussed there. Yeah.
I think you need multiple videos, because some people, if you cherry pick some of my videos, I'm going to look like a guy that just hates on anybody who's fat. You'll be like, what an asshole. He called people fat. Look at it. Oh, if you have abs, but if you look at my other videos, you pick my best 100, you're going to be like, this is the most caring guy about weight loss I've ever met. So it depends. What are you cherry picking from it? But if you have overall a message of like, I'm encouraging you to lose weight, I'm trying to motivate you to lose weight, I'm saying you don't need to be perfect, let's try to get halfway there, and then I'm giving them the methods to do so by educating them, then what else can you do?
I like that, Coach Greg. Let's give you an honorary doctorate right now.